It's Friday, August 29th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. It's our seasonal Newfoundland Quarterly show, where we take a radio tour through the pages of culture, history, and life of the Quarterly. The theme for this one planned months in advance, but ended up being rather prescient. The theme, part of a cycle built on elements, is fire. Full house here today, and we've got a couple calls to make too as we go through the pages of just quite the issue. Joan Sullivan is here as always, managing editor of the Newfoundland Quarterly. I remember you saying we're going to be doing the elements, and at no point did I give any thought to fire and summer and what the future held. And yet when I saw, like when you sent me the online or the PDF little look that I do before, and I saw the cover, and I mean, you sent me a note to kind of let me know, but I was just like, what the whole thing for the summer this province has been through, and to have discussions around fire, Start talking about it, Joan, before I keep going here.
Well, the cover is a painting by Jean-Claude Roy, who gives us a painting every year as a subscription prize.
It is quite, such a striking cover.
It's so generous, and it helps us, like if when we're at the craft fair set up to sell subscriptions, his work is bringing eyeballs to our table. So not only does he give us a painting, he calls me and says, what's the theme of the fall issue? Yeah. So I said, it's fire. So when we were talking about elements earlier, we just thought fire, it's the fall issue. You'll be wanting to put some wood in for your wood stove. Maybe you'll be toasting some marshmallows or whatever. Yeah. And even my note from the editor, because we went to press, obviously a while ago, was like fire, la, la, la. Like there's just nothing in there at all about what was going to happen to our province. But then Jean-Claude Roy goes and paints the Adams Cove fire. Yeah. And of course, his work is always so tremendous. So it's this very striking image. And it's just so odd for the Quarterly to be so topical. We don't try to do that at all. Like CBC, you guys do the topical stuff. We're contextualizing. We're having the conversation. We're putting into like a historical, cultural context. That's our role. And here we have stepped into a little bit of a different role.
Yeah, what I saw, and Jean-Claude's going to be on the show in about 40 minutes from now to talk about this painting. So we'll hear about the time and place and what he was thinking about. But
I wonder if he painted it from real life, because that's what he usually does.
Yeah, it is really something. And thoughts on the rest of the issue?
Well, it's because this title itself is From Ashes and Embers. So I'm hoping that's kind of a hopeful thing. Like there is something growing from it. And as we'll see when we talk to these wonderful writers around the table, we took a very broad issue of fire, like from ghost ships and phenomenon that you see at sea, maritime warnings, cooking with a certain kind of spice. And Gail Collins is here, so she is a wonderful essayist and writes beautiful memoirs. So she was talking about her medical journey that she went through, and I won't go through anymore, but it made me think of like fire in your body, like
inner fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the beauty about the themes of the Quarterly each time, right? There's so much you so many different ways you can come at a theme, and fire. Lots of different thoughts around it. And the rebirth part, especially with what we've been going through, out of the ashes. Yeah, no, I like it a lot. You mentioned Gail Collins, former CBC colleague, sitting here in front of us. How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for coming in. So what we'll do is we'll do a little, I guess, whip around the table for folks. So give us just kind of like the Reader's Digest version of each of your works, and then we can dig into it a little bit through the hour. But just tell us a bit about what you wrote.
My essay is called The Red Beret, and it's a sort of a lighthearted look at the early days of my breast cancer diagnosis. I didn't want to get into all the medical stuff, and I chose the Red Beret as a theme that could carry, several themes through it. And
you said lighthearted, and when I read it, like the humor, like we're talking about cancer and your personal story, but then there was some really great moments of humor in it that I think kind of drew me in really well, and just made me think a lot about the piece. It's a beautiful piece.
Good, thank you. A friend told me she laughed out loud.
Yeah, Gail has a touch for that. I mean, she's written about her mother's journey too, which was a very difficult one at times, and it's always very full of love. And I understand that you are writing a series of essays. I'm assuming you're working towards a book. We're waiting for a book.
Yeah, come on now, Gail. Let's get.
Well, you've put me on the spot now, but yes, it is leading up to a book. I do have a series of essays about different aspects of the whole sort of cancer journey and all that entails. But also, I have essays on other topics as well that are
Excellent.
yeah.
Well, that's great. I look for and no pressure on timelines here, but it's great to know that.
Well, now that Joan's put it out there, I feel compelled. I must write a book.
Okay, that's all right. My job is done. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes this is how art advances in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's radio bullying, as we like to call it. Karin Murray-Bergquist is here too. How you doing?
All right, thanks. Nice to be here.
Yeah, tell us about your piece.
I took sort of the theme of fire at sea and the idea of the role of fire in different maritime legends. So, in particular, I was starting with legends surrounding wreckers and the idea of false fires, and that piece of legend that's sort of been twisted and sometimes misrepresented as history. And then also looking at that broader theme of lights as warnings, lights as signals, and that dualistic element of fire as both the greatest danger at sea and the thing that will save your life in terms of lighthouses and landmarks.
And tell folks a bit about yourself, right? Because you're a PhD student.
I'm a PhD student in folklore at MUN, and I'm working on a project about ghost ship legends. So a lot of what I put into the article was material that I'd been tossing around in my head as, this is not quite relevant to the thesis, but I want to write about it. I want to look further into it somehow. So when I heard that the theme was fire, and I was sort of knocking around a few ideas, that was what came out of it.
Awesome. And yeah, I've got a bunch of questions for you later in the show about like phantom lights and cows as well. So just everyone, the story about the cows is quite something. So we will get there. Remzi Cei is here as well. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here.
I feel like I run into you a lot.
That's a good thing.
Your pieces, so each of these pieces is very different, but just give us the little synopsis of yours.
So my story is about an adventure of essentially smuggling spices to Newfoundland and Labrador, but really the experience of being a first-generation Newfoundlander and Labradorian and bringing things familiar to us to a place that is now home, but maybe needs that additional sort of touch of what was familiar before. And mixing those two really kind of essentially is what the story is about, is what we go through to build that new sense of home with the combination of the past and the present. But also shared very lightheartedly, because I think too often, at least in my experience, I'm tempted to be very melancholy, because the experience of building a home in a place unfamiliar to you can be a very lonely one. But there are also very light-hearted and comical moments, and I think those should be relived by people around us. Laughter makes all of us happier, and if I can do that for anybody, it makes me happy. So,
and I think the laughter bit is big, and the connection with it, and just when you talk about in something that is close to folks when it's involving food, everyone can identify with that, and it's a story of just thinking of, well, if I was somewhere else and what this would be like, and we'll get into that story in just a little bit, but it's like every time. I mean, we do a quarterly show. I love all the work, but this yesterday and today, like reading the pieces, each one is so different, and yet so interesting and compelling, and really spoke to me. What does it? When you folks, when you talk to someone like Joan, and you hear about a theme or there's writing, like what's it like to know that, like, Remzi, can you just pass me I'm going to make some radio magic here. So this is what this is what the issue sounds like.
Hold it closer so they can see the cover.
Right. So this is what it sounds like, but all the work in here, right? Fiction, nonfiction, art. This beautiful cover. What's it like to know that you're part of something like this that is now out in the world and is on the record? Because like in your piece earlier, it was like, I think you quoted from 1925 from the Quarterly.
Yes, that was rather fun. Finding a source that was actually from an older edition of the Quarterly.
Yeah. So like all these years later, from 1925, you're like going back and you find this source. So now think of you folks being involved with this one, and it doesn't have to be a big stamp, but it's a stamp, right? What's that like?
It's exciting and it's humbling as well, because so many great articles, so many brilliant pieces, such a beautiful piece of cover art, which you can all see over the radio. And I did have I sort of reached out to people asking if they knew any stories that could be useful for my piece. So actually the tip that I had for that earlier edition of the Quarterly was actually from Dale Jarvis. So
he's a good man, Dale Jarvis.
Huge thanks to Dale for digging that up. But yeah, looking back at that long record, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that Gail and Karin have both written for the Quarterly before, and Karin will have something in the winter issue as well.
Oh, excellent.
And Remzi's new to us, and hopefully will write for us again. But he was one of the people that entered the nonfiction contest.
Yeah.
And so that ended up being such a great way to learn of new writers as well. So I like that that writers can see that there's like an open door into the Quarterly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Gail, you're going to say?
Yes, and for me, my essay is very personal, and it's funny, but it's also poignant. And it's very revealing in places. And for me, the Quarterly was the best place for it, because Joan takes such care with the words, and it's always so beautifully presented. And you're part of a community, you feel, and you're part of a long tradition of, culture and heritage when you're part of the Quarterly.
Yeah, it's kind of like it could come out and be so representative of the present, right, the now, but at the same time can turn into such an interesting time capsule when you go back and think of the previous ones from, was it 1901?
1901. Next year's our 125th birthday.
Happy 125th anniversary early. That's like 125 years of history. That's a lot of writers and artists and people putting words together about, for the Newfoundland Quarterly.
And you're part of the public record of Newfoundland once you're in the Quarterly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
you
nice
really
way to
are.
put it. That's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
That was actually part of the motivation for me to submit something to the Quarterly, because I feel like the Newfoundland Labrador quintessential experience is a diversity of experiences. It's everybody here who lives on the island and Labrador shares unique experiences, despite constant attempts for us to kind of develop some stereotypes of what those might be.
Yeah.
So being able to share part of the experience that some Newfoundlanders and Labradorians might identify with and others might find insightful was really a big part of my inspiration to want to enter. And I think the contest that you issued, Joan, really was an open door to invite people to submit regardless of background. And I really appreciated that, because it was a welcoming approach to bringing in new writing.
How did you learn about the contest?
I abandoned social media earlier this year, so a friend of mine actually shared the link, and I went online and read the page on your website, because otherwise I would have missed it. But reading how it was framed and the fact that you didn't have to be a published writer, but that this was about really showcasing Newfoundland and Labrador creative nonfiction writing was essentially a challenge to work towards, I guess, meeting for me. So I appreciated that, and I hope there are more calls so you invite more voices in.
Yeah, we'd like to do that every 2 years. And so this was in partnership with Writers NL, a group I highly recommend all writers join. Yeah.
We've got Shelley Kawaja's on the line, who wrote Fire and Failure, Guy Fawkes Night in Newfoundland and Labrador. Hi, Shelley.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Tell us about this great piece. Tell us about it.
Well, when I heard from the Newfoundland Quarterly about writing this, I was actually in the middle of working on my second novel. And it's interesting you talk about, entering the public record and being a part of history. When you put something out there, it's quite permanent. And I was actually struggling with that idea. My first novel did quite well, and working on my I just felt this pressure, to live up to that and to live up to that expectation, and not just the expectation for my own work, but for being a part of the community of writers here in Newfoundland. It is such a vibrant community, and I felt so new to it. And
as we wait on this pause of Shelley's, I think there's a phone line issue.
Yeah, I'll just recommend. So her novel is The Raw Light of Morning. I think it came out, I think it's 22. Oh, it's so good.
Okay.
It was so good. Yeah.
Kira's just... okay, so Shelley, we can't hear you right now. So Kira's going to try to call you back, and we'll let's just put a pin in the Guy Fawkes part of the conversation, and then and we'll get Shelley back on the line.
Yeah, it was great to have voice from the West Coast as well. I was the editorial advisory committee, which for various reasons is in a little bit of flux right now, but one of the members is Dr. Thomas Halford from Grenfell, so he connected me with Shelley. I've never met her, but I'm just a big fan of her writing.
So then, if we're talking about Guy Fawkes Night, Bonfire Night, and for me growing up, it was always a thing, right? You look forward to it.
Yeah. Did you call it Bonfire Night? Or did you call it
Bonfire Night. And then I learned about Guy. I guess I got kind of with Shelley. Learned about this.
Did you know what a guy was, even if you didn't know if it was Guy Fawkes? Okay.
And then I think as I got older, it was like, I found out the history, right? But it was always just this big thing in the fall that we would look forward to, And have you, Remzi, Guy Fawkes Night, Bonfire Night? Have you done it here?
Bonfire Night, I've done it here, and I've witnessed it in England as well.
What's the compare contrast on that?
I think we get a little more intense than what I've seen in the UK.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
But I've been to the Bonfire in Paradise. They seem to really go all out there.
Yeah, they make it a fundraiser for their fire department, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's really impressive to see. And largely, I don't know that it's always... The history of it is shared very much. So it's largely a family event. People gather, and it's almost sort of this initial fall sort of event that everybody comes together for. But in England, they really remind you of its history quite often. So it's good to see it in that context, in terms of actual historic context.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm a townie, but I remember the guys, like the stuffed dummies that that to me is common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I hadn't seen it, right? Because for
Yeah.
me, it was always just, you light a big fire, bonfire night. And then as I got older, I'm like, oh, okay. And the bit of the history. And we're having an issue getting Shelley back. But I will say one of the end points of this, because she writes a bit about Bonfire Night Newfoundland, saying Bonfire Night was easy. All you had to do was set something on fire, something big, something worthy of all the lead up and anticipation. The old hay barn, maybe. It wasn't safe anyway, with the roof in the state of collapse and the kids poking around all the time. Or maybe Pop's shed. It was too small, listing to one side, and he'd been wanting to build a new one. Sure, it was just in the way now. So she's got that part, and then the end bit. Bonfire Night is an open invitation, because whatever we are facing right now, whatever we are about to face next, we're in it together, and there's something about that is big enough and worthy enough to endure. And I think, again, given this summer, and even though we're talking about fire in this case, but in a far different setting, that line for me really, really stood out.
Yeah, she drew a beautiful through line from the initial idea to through her own personal work, through her own history with Bonfire Night, through Guy Fawkes, and then back again. It was beautiful.
All right, so Karin, tell us about these cows. I can't wait anymore.
Right, the cows. The infamous cows.
Yeah.
So the idea that of tying a lantern between the horns of a cow, and I don't know if you've got like a Highland cow with giant horns or what, because it sort of seems like an awkward place to tie a lantern. But this is one of the classic wrecker legends of that's kind of found being told about the English West Country, I'm going to say, because it wasn't usually people from Cornwall telling these stories. It was people talking about Cornwall as this place where your ship might get wrecked because there would be people putting lanterns between the horns of their cows, which would, when the cow would walk along, it would be sort of swaying. The lantern would be swaying like a ship's lantern at sea. And so ships going along the coast would think, oh, that's open ocean. Especially in a storm, if you're just kind of vaguely making out a light, you'd go, oh yes, there's another ship ahead. That's great. I can go that way and not crash into the coast. And then boom, you crash into the coast.
Yeah, because we're talking about sailing at dark, so like 19th century type stuff, early 20th century. So everything's dark. You don't have radar. You don't have Latin long. You're just sailing in the dark. And when you see like the lights that you see tell you stuff. And if it's a light on a cow bobbing back and forth, you're like, oh, that's more ocean. Let's keep sailing towards it. Oh my gosh, we wrecked our ship, and now the locals are raiding us because that's what the crowd in Cornwall. That's what those folks in Cornwall do.
That's basically how the classic wrecker legend would work.
This is why I never trust anyone from Cornwall.
You sound just like someone from London.
So how does it work for Newfoundland? And were we as horrible as the Cornwallians?
The Cornish?
Whoa now. All right. Cornish. Go for it.
Well, a lot of Newfoundlanders have Cornish background.
Uh-oh.
So these legends did get carried over to some extent. There aren't a ton of. It doesn't seem to have been as prevalent a legend, but it's common enough to turn up in, as you mentioned earlier, an old Newfoundland Quarterly article, and I believe it's mentioned as well in one of the encyclopedias of Newfoundland and Labrador that talks about a bit about the term wreckers and the way that term shifts and the different meanings that it carries, because it could also be used in a much less murdery sense. It could be used in the sense of just people who would salvage wrecks when a wreck happened for whatever reason, just because it's a dangerous shore. People who go and remove goods without necessarily going through the legal channels to do so. But that didn't carry the implication of causing the wreck. So you have this spectrum of what wrecker can refer to.
Right.
And people love a colourful legend. So this idea that there were false fires being set, that there were that either imitation lighthouses or imitation ships that were being placed in spots that were intended to cause mischief. And then that people would plunder the wreck and kill all the crew on board. That tended to grip the imagination.
Yeah, it's gripping my imagination when you say it.
Yeah, and there's actually a famous case in Cornwall. So I'm just going to stray back away from the Newfoundland situation for a minute to just give the idea of how this could turn from a historical event into this really lurid story. Yeah. There was this story of a lighthouse keeper in the Scilly Isles who had kind of been careless with his light. This was, I think, the 17th century, so not a very technologically advanced time in terms of navigation. Longitude was still being figured out, and obviously it's still quite dangerous to sail, especially around the Scilly Isles, which are very rocky. And unfortunately, a ship was wrecked due to the light burning down to an extent that the ship couldn't see it from a great distance. And that obviously was investigated. There was a huge sort of kerfuffle about it. But over time, as the story was retold, it went from, oh, this careless lighthouse keeper caused a shipwreck by not tending to his light correctly, to, do you think he maybe deliberately extinguished the light? Could that have happened? And a much more sinister cast. So yes, we don't really have any historical evidence that this cow business ever actually happened. But as soon as someone starts talking about, oh, did you know so and so sends his cows out along the cliff with lanterns swinging like to try and deceive ships, that's the kind of rumor that people find hard to forget.
And this is all before the internet, much, much, much before, with all the rumors that are around nowadays. Like, I just find it fascinating that stuff doesn't really change.
Oh, gossip is a powerful thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So what is it that attracts you to this type of research? Is it just the goths, or, tell us about it.
I mean, I can't lie. It is a
Historic
little bit the
goths.
goss.
Yeah, all right.
But it's also, I love seeing the connections between history and legend where those bridges occur, and why a far-fetched story ends up being told as true, and also why, and yeah, sometimes it is this sort of a rumor getting out of hand or a story being retold with certain things emphasized until it's a different story altogether. And sometimes it's the lack of information. A ship that's been wrecked. A lot of what I talk about in my ghost ship research is when the fate of a ship isn't known, or the things that could have been done to prevent a wreck aren't known. Sometimes stories can fill in those gaps in a way that's more satisfying than what the facts can actually give us, because if the facts are scant, if a ship goes down with all hands, you don't necessarily have the final piece of that story. And it's hard to live with a story that doesn't have an ending.
Yeah. I mean, when I read your piece, and I was, when I think about the maritime history of Newfoundland and Labrador, and you look at those maps with the shipwrecks, and you think of, so there's the folklore, gossip kind of side of things that we're talking about, and then also, as you point out in your piece too, there's also the fact that there just weren't a lot of lighthouses and lights, and there's a big old rocky shoreline all around this place, and it's real easy if you're in the dark sailing before technology became what it is now to just end up wrecked.
Yep, there's a shipwreck ballad about the Jane Hunter, which was wrecked off of Trepassey. There was only one survivor of that wreck. It was a huge loss of life, and the ship was later said to appear as this ghost light sort of floating around the cliffs until the spirit was exorcised. But the ballad really emphasizes that this wouldn't have happened if the government had built a lighthouse at that point. And there is now a lighthouse where there wasn't one before. And
the proud history of blaming the government, which is part of Newfoundland heritage as well.
That's another long-standing tradition.
And not just here. It is around the world for that. Remzi, tell us about yours. Oh, and folks, I will say, as I mentioned phoning people, we do have a bit of a phone line issue here today. So people are working furiously on fixing it. I'm getting some nods there. But so yeah, if the phones get fixed, we'll hear from people on the phones. And if not, we'll just keep talking. Tell us, give us some more detail on the piece.
Yeah, so my story is inspired by a trip back from Montreal from my best friend's wedding. I learned from Newfoundlanders and Labradorians over the years that no matter if you're first or multi-generation Newfoundlander and Labradorian, if you go away somewhere, you seem to take a little bit of the familiar with you. And I found myself in Prince George maybe 10 years ago, and don't ask me why, at a Walmart. And there was a whole purity section there. There were all kinds of Newfoundland and Labrador products there. And I thought, yeah, this is basically a taste of a little bit of home that people just take with them wherever they go. And my story is really about bringing a little bit of that back. In 2019, coming back from my best friend's wedding, as usual, every time I'd go to the mainland, get spices and seasonings and foods, familiar jams and wafers and things, and just roll them into my pants and my other clothes and my carry-on and checked luggage. And because I ran out of space in my checked luggage, I took some Vegeta, which is a very familiar seasoning used by people from the Balkan countries, no matter which of those countries you belong to, no matter what your allegiances are, you all have
one consistent
loyalty to
bit.
Vegeta. So Kosovars, Bosniaks, Croats, Serbs, everybody loves Vegeta. And Vegeta is a seasoning, essentially, that is mostly dry vegetable stock and some salt. But if you do a blind taste test and you ask a Kosovar if it's Knorr or bouillon cube or if it's Vegeta, they will be able to tell you. This is a specialty. So bringing in a kilo of that, which is, I guess, 2.2 pounds of Vegeta, that would have lasted me a year in terms of cooking. And not being aware of CATSA regulations, which apparently, because of various safety requirements, limit you from bringing any more, and this is a public service announcement, limit you from bringing any more than 300 grams of organic powder on board.
See, when I read this, I was like, what? Really? Wait, no, because I had no idea.
Yeah, neither did I until this fateful day.
Yeah. So then what happened?
So this lovely airport person that will never be forgotten came into my life. She decided that sticking to the rules was very important. And she spelled out the rules that only 300 grams of organic powder can be taken on board. Therefore,
I mean, we have to think about safety, right?
Correct.
Right.
Vegeta is dangerous.
I mean, more than 300 and how many? 300 grams?
300 grams.
More than
yeah.
300 grams.
Yeah.
Reckless.
Yep, absolutely. So I think it's 0.75 pounds. That's about it. So she expected me, I think, to just toss it, and I wasn't going to part ways from this precious powder. Or with this precious powder. So I asked her if I could use one of those, the see-through toiletry bags. Yeah. So I asked her if I could fill one of those, and I think she was completely surprised. She didn't expect that, but then she said yes. And so began the journey of measuring and estimating the correct amount of Vegeta and whether there's 300 grams of it. And as I say in the story, at one point she looked to me like an experienced spice trader because she was measuring it and estimating and thinking, okay, is this 300 grams? And the thing that will always be in my memory, etched in my memory, is that she took off her gloves to do this job because it became a bit unwieldy while she was measuring it. And then her nails, which were pretty in pink and also unforgettable, made the bag tear and things started flying off, and she had this white shirt and all of it got powdery, and I don't think she liked me very much. And at that point, she just wanted to get rid of me and Vegeta. But yeah, the story is about that experience and ultimately ending up with 437 grams of Vegeta at home, which I consider a major win.
That is a big size win.
Yeah,
right?
That's nearly 50% more Vegeta. And because Jacqueline, which is the name I gave this officer, it will remain anonymous. Yeah. She tried her best to stick to the rules, and I thank her for it. But I also thank her for underestimating how much she gave me, because I got to cook a little bit more with that.
And how long did it last? Not the year.
Half a year.
Half a year, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Just about half, yeah. We go through about a kilo of it. But thankfully now you can get Vegeta in most stores. And I don't work for the manufacturer of Vegeta. But yeah, you can get Vegeta
when did that
in
change?
Most grocery stores. I think around COVID is when things started to change. So you can get it at most grocery stores around the city here in St. John's. I don't know about Central and Western and Labrador, but you can definitely get it in St. John's, in Sobeys, Dominion. Up until recently, also Costco used to carry bigger bags, so that got my
way
mother
more than
hoarding.
way more than you could ever dream to carry onto an airplane in the bulk there.
Yeah, but I think, and I don't know, I think this is something that probably I would have to explore with a counselor or my mother. But I don't know if it's the trauma of leaving a place, whether in conflict or voluntarily, that makes us constantly hoard and collect and fear that somehow we might run out of this product that is so familiar. But yeah, I think if you come to my kitchen, my mother has made sure that we have at least 2 or 3 kilos of vegeta, of tea, of particular black tea that she drinks, and other things that we can't live without, seemingly.
Wow. Now, I will say, and I will preface this by saying, everything we bring back from Korea when my wife and I go over there is all within the regulations, and there's nothing outside of the regulations. But if you look at the suitcase, it looks like we're coming back here to open up a Korean variety store, is all I'm saying. It's like, what are you doing with all of that stuff? And it's kind of like, well, we, it's a year or a year and a half. We need it. It's important. And they are doing better with stuff here. This just in, the phone lines appear to be working.
Oh, okay.
Let's give this give it a test.
Because I was going to say I can speak a little to Janice's article if you can't get her, but if you can get her, it's better.
So right now we've got Jean-Claude on the line. Jean-Claude Roy, hello, sir.
How are you? Good afternoon.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show. Amazing. Just such a striking cover for the art piece you did for the Quarterly. Can you tell us a bit about it, describe it, and kind of we'll go from, and like how you painted it, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so the story is that when I came back from France, the fire was out, and Joan Sullivan, the Newfoundland Quarterly, phoned me and told me the theme of the new cover. Well, the painting, I donate a painting every year, see? Yes. For the Newfoundland, the last 15 years, every year I donate a painting. And this year was fire, so I say, my God, I got to try to find something that goes with fire. So in my mind, I say, okay, burnt forest, and I saw fireweed with it, okay? So I say, I paint outside, so I had to go over there to Adams Cove, where there was a fire, and I was looking for the burnt forest. But the fireweed were not in flower when I came in May, all right? So they come in July. So I went around, everywhere was burned, and did some sketches, look at things, and suddenly I got to that spot, and the fire just came on the back of that house. And it was in a barn next to it. It was almost a perfect composition for a painting. When I paint, I really change the compositions. I like to find the spot perfect. And I love all dwelling in Newfoundland, and I hate when they disappear. So that's why I decided to do that painting.
Wow. Yeah. And Joan, what did you think when you saw it?
I was astonished. Bonjour, Jean-Claude. I'm here as
Bonjour.
well. I was telling everyone how generous you are to give us a painting every year, and how you actually go and paint a painting for us, which is just so wonderful. But it's so striking. It's just I don't know the word for it. I mean, of course it's beautiful, but it's also terrible. It's the fire is so scary, and I wondered. I mean, was there a flame there when you were painting, or No. Okay.
There was no flame, actually. That was finished, okay?
Okay.
That was a few weeks after, okay? Yeah. But as some people came and they asked me how it was. Okay, I talked to the people, and they told me what was happening. The fire just came on the back, and even on the front there was some grass burned.
Yes.
But it was starting to get green again. Because it grew again fast in the spring.
Yeah.
So I had to imagine the fire on the back. But, fire, I did. It's not the first painting of fire I did. I did one a long time ago. I did a triptych of the Baie d'Espair Highway. One side was burned, the other one was not burned. And the center was that long road in the Baie d'Espair. Mm-hmm. I did a big triptych of that. And it's fascinating when you get the black and the regrowth after. That growth is amazing. But for me, what breaks my heart is those old buildings disappearing.
Yeah.
And the people and so when you go in a burn area, it's despair. I cannot stand it. It's hard to paint.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Jean-Claude, when it comes to art for something like this, and you talk about you hate to see when buildings are lost and disappear. So you go to Adams Cove post the first fire, and yet the Kingston fire starts later in the summer. When it comes to a piece of work like yours or any other piece that kind of marks a time and place, what do you think its role is for the future and for people to for when they look at it?
Those paintings will stay. And it's a piece of history. My way of painting is my diary. Every day something happens. Okay, that's what I feel every day. What I saw what the people feel when they saw the fire, when you're in front of it. And that's what I try to express. And it's hard to explain why I paint things like that, First of all, I did paint that scene because there was a fire. The team was sub-fire, okay? Mm. So the team was not fire up, but we never paint that scene. But I'm sure that in the next few months, I'm going to go around all those burnt places, which all the old buildings that are painted before disappear. I heard about it, see? And it's going to make, and I got to show how they were before, see?
Mm. Jean-Claude, merci beaucoup pour ça, and just a fantastic painting. So thank you so much.
Yes, me, thank you. It was a pleasure to try to explain what I did. Thank you.
It was, it was so great because to talk to an artist while looking. I mean, we're looking at the cover right now, and I know this is a radio show too. People are imagining it, and when they see it, to have your words around it, it's important and great. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, bye. Jean-Claude Roy there, painter, quite the artist, quite the piece, quite the cover there. You're listening to The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. It's our quarterly, or seasonal Newfoundland Quarterly show as we dig into the pages of the Newfoundland Quarterly, the culture, the history, the art, you name it. And now that our phone lines are back up and working, as you're just hearing with Jean-Claude there, Janice Cavell is on the line, a historian specializing in the Arctic. Janice wrote The Explorer and the anti-suffragist Bob Bartlett's love affair. Hi, Janice.
Hi.
So why give folks the quick synopsis of the piece and just tell us why you're so fascinated in researching this side of Bob Bartlett's life, because I found it fascinating to read. So, but I'm just curious on your reasoning behind it.
Well, I didn't actually start out to research Bob Bartlett's life. I was researching the woman who's mentioned in the article, Belle Anderson, who was the wife of a scientist on the Canadian Arctic expedition that Bartlett was a part of, and I was reading through her letters. And there was one that she'd written to her husband, who was still in the Arctic in 1916. And she said, well, you remember how Captain Bartlett told me that he was in love with a married woman? And by this weird coincidence, I actually just met her. And since Bartlett has the reputation of being a man with zero interest in women, I thought that was really quite the fascinating little tidbit. So I started to look into it a bit more. Now, Belle didn't mention the woman's name. She was very discreet about that. And she was, at that time, in a little town in Iowa, her hometown. She was waiting for her husband to come back. And this woman, Sarah White, had turned up as an anti-suffragist talker. And as I said, she didn't mention the name, but there's a wonderful website called Chronicling America that has all kinds of newspapers. So I was able to find a newspaper account of the talk, and it gave the name, Mrs. Henry Preston White. So with that for a start, I was able to research up the background on this woman and found out quite a bit about her because she had, a public profile as a speaker. And so it just went from there.
When you're researching and you kind of go down a rabbit hole, or you end up somewhere where you didn't even think you'd imagine, what does this give us for like the understanding of the past and people and relationships and context on, perhaps deeper context on folks that we've heard about growing up? In this case, Bob Bartlett, a famous explorer, known in Newfoundland and Labrador, of course, and beyond. But what do you think about that?
Well, I really love when things like that turn up, because people put out narratives about themselves and others.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is how they want to go down in history. And there are certain things that perhaps understandably, and maybe they have a right, they want to keep private. But later generations are, of course, terribly curious, and we want to know. So when you can get a little bit of information like that, and sort of pulling at one thread and then another, and then you uncover this whole other side to a person. I mean, as a historian, I really, really enjoy that. Mm-hmm. And I was able to look at Bartlett's papers with, completely different eyes. There's his journal that he kept on the voyage of the Karluk, which was part of the Stephenson expedition, very famous achievement on his part. And he mentioned someone called S. And since I'd done this research, I knew that he was talking about Sarah White. And there's passages in his letters to his mother where he wrote about Sarah, but he didn't give her correct name. He called her Julia.
Right.
And, it does. I think different people will have different ideas about what it means. He had a long relationship with a married woman, at least an emotional affair, maybe more. There's no way to be sure. Different people will have different ideas about how wrong that might have been, but still, this was the real person.
Yeah, and it's like you said, there's what people put out there, and then there's what actually happened. And as folks try to figure it out, it gives a bit more to think about. Before I let you go, I'm just curious. You specialize in the Arctic. What is it about the Arctic that draws you in about research?
Oh, I've been doing it for so long, I've almost forgotten. Actually, what started me off was Antarctic history. I had just quite accidentally, as so many things seem to happen to me, came across an account of the Scott expedition. But then I switched over to the Arctic, being Canadian, and I have a little bit of an interest in the North, as I'm from Northern Ontario, which is not exactly the Arctic, but it's still pretty cold.
Right. We're short on time here today with a bit of a phone line situation that's just now been fixed. So, Janice, I do want to say thank you so much for sharing this. And folks, when you do read The Explorer and the Anti-Suffragist Bob Bartlett's Love Affair, it's a great piece. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Janice Cavell there, historian specializing in the Arctic. I want to go back to Gail Collins here, freelance writer, editor, former CBC colleague. Tell us a bit about your piece again, because you gave the introduction. It's such a personal piece, filled. It's lighthearted. There's humor in it. Tell us about when you sat down to write it.
When I sat down to write it, luckily I had some notes, because when you're going through chemo, chemo brain is a real thing. Everything gets sort of mixed and muddled up there together. But right after I got diagnosed, I was talking to a friend who's a writer, and I had just heard 2 songs on the radio. Another one bites another one bites the dust, and all I need is a miracle. So I said, well, I guess there are 2 ways this could go. And he said, are you taking notes, because you have a different take on things? So I thought, I should take notes. And I often did, because when you're writing about yourself and about people that are close to you, you want to be accurate in the dialogue and things like that. And so I called it the Red Beret, but it also has to do with hair, because, hair is very important. And during chemo, you lose your hair. So the day I got my hair cut, I decided I would go to my favorite coffee shop in Gambo, where was about a half an hour away from me, and I hadn't been there for a while. So I had the Red Beret, and I had my little mahogany-colored hairpiece ready to go. So I went in and I made some notes and I did a little writing, and then my head started to get really, really itchy, and I tried to deal with it and I couldn't deal with it, and I thought, I better go now. So I was at the counter and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. So I tore my hat off and put the hair down, and I said, I'm sorry, I have to take my hair off. And the woman behind me said, never mind that, my dear. She said, pretty soon you'll be taking your breast out and plunking it on the counter. So there are a lot of funny moments like that. And I thought, oh, well, I'll make a note of this. But then there were also some really sort of poignant moments that I didn't expect. One day it was really gray, and I just really wanted to go somewhere. And I was staying with my really wonderful cousins, who I'm sure wanted. They lived next door to me, but they insisted I move in with them, and I'm sure they could have used a little break from me. So I got my little red beret out and put it on, and I went down to Trinity, Bonavista Bay, and went to this little vintage store that's run by a friend of mine, and he'd reopened it for the winter season for Christmas. And I went in and I couldn't find anyone there, just all the usual things. And I went to the real back of the store, and he was there with the parents of a friend of mine from down in New West Valley, and they were sitting around this square varnished table, and they were having this great chocolate, and they had this really good coffee, and I sat with them, and it was so nice because they just told stories and talked about cancer, and I felt like myself once again. And Bruce, my friend's father, is very, very funny, and he said, you should consider yourself a very valuable person now. And I said, why? He said, the government is investing thousands of dollars in your treatment. And I thought, well, I better do something worthwhile with this.
Yeah, with the investment,
But then the Kirk, who owned the restaurant, said to me, do you know where this table came from? This square, wooden table, sort of mid-century modern look. And I said, yeah, it belonged to your aunt and uncle who had a restaurant in Centerville. I know because I had one like it. They gave it to me. And this memory came back to me of being a child. And the people who had the restaurant, they were my parents' best friends. And we would go down there to the restaurant, and we would, be at their house in the back. And when the restaurant closed down for the night, they'd turn off the lights, and we'd go out in the back, my parents and my little friend's parents and my sister, and we would, just by the light of the jukebox, we'd dance. And so it was really sort of magical because, you'd have those lights and there'd be, fast songs, slow songs, Waltz with My Father. And all of a sudden, sitting there, I had this feeling that those people were with me. And a table is such a tangible thing.
Yeah.
And I was touching the table. And the table connected me to my parents who were gone, my parents' friends who were gone. And all of a sudden, I felt their support. I felt their support. And I knew I had to write about that. I felt like I was in a short story myself. And then I was really grateful for the comment about, take notes. Mm-hmm. So I had the notes about that. So the dialogue is all accurate. I wasn't imagining anything, which sometimes you have to do. You have to recreate things a little bit.
Yeah, based on feeling.
Yes.
And some memory, as opposed to when you take the notes, like, no, this is how it was.
Well, I use techniques from fiction. I create scenes, so you have to be accurate when it's in, sort of a memoir. You can't be too creative with it. You have to stay.
Because later, it could lead to different paths. Yeah, of course.
So are you carrying a notebook with you all the time and just writing?
No, I write when I get home. But
okay.
when I'm in a coffee shop, I do write. And when I was writing this essay, I was in another coffee shop back in Gambo, and I was sitting by myself in this back room, and there were all, it's all this mismatched furniture and china and stuff, and it's really, really charming. And as I was writing the word table, honest to God, this woman came in with a little child, and she pointed to a different table, and she said, "Do you see that table? That table belonged to Poppy, but he gave it to Billy for the cafe." Oh, my gosh. And she walked out. And I had shivers, right, as I was writing the word table. I have shivers now if you're telling me it. So, I love coincidences.
So when's this book coming out?
You can pre-order.
Oh, my gosh. All right, we're out of time. Joan, how do folks, if they want to order the quarterly, where do they go? How do they figure this out?
The easiest way is to go to nqonline.ca, and you can submit a subscription order there, but you can always give us a call, 709-864-2426.
And the next theme?
Air.
All right. Fire to air, folks. It's Friday, right? Long weekend is upon us. Thank you all for listening. No show on Monday. Gardening, September gardening on Tuesday as we look to putting the season to bed. Thanks for listening. The Signal at cbc.ca for emails, and everyone here, thank you for this conversation today. Cheers.